What's up, y'all? Welcome to another episode of the Bhangra podcast. Today I have Poonam, who is the new or old or returning director of Bruin Bhangra this year. Why don't you introduce yourself?
My name is Poonam Jolly Siddhu. I was a part of Bruin Bhangra from 2003 to 2007 and am so fortunate to be a part of its vast alumni network today. I also joined Empire in 2010 and competed until 2016, and I'm fortunate to be a part of its vast alumni network today as well.
So I guess then what sparks the, it seems this year there's quite a little bit of a rebrand or re-envisioning of what Bruin is. And so why don't you tell me about that?
So I think we were talking about this earlier, I'm probably not the director. I'm just an alumni who is part of a small alumni board that is closely collaborating with the team this year. I think change in leadership is probably an overstatement. So Bruin is, and I hope will always be a collegiate team running a world-class Bhangra competition with unflinching support from a vast alumni network. I think like many collegiate teams worldwide, if your hallmark competition gets canceled 2 years in a row because of a global pandemic, it's hard to pass down your institutional knowledge or secret sauce, if you will. So this year's presidents, Khushi Stran and Rhea Jabra, are facilitating this incredible partnership between the current team and the alumni board to reinvent the entire Bruin weekend in honor of our 25th anniversary. So we're all really looking forward to you hearing from Rhea and Khushi in a couple months. They're heads down on competition work right now. So you have their inferior substitute, me, for now.
All right. Yeah. So I obviously Bruin 2025, 25th anniversary. But how, I guess how did this vision come about? What sparked the, I know COVID happened, so on and so forth, but what sparked it for this specific year? Okay.
So a lesser known fact that I think we've also forgotten over the years, that we are actually the second longest running Bhangra competition worldwide. It actually is not in Punjab. It's not in the UK. It's not anywhere else. It's right here in America. The two longest running are Bhangra Blowout, which is the longest running for collegiate teams, and we are the longest running for independent teams. So I think we're hit with that in the face every few years, but this year when we absorbed the gravity of that, I think it was a profoundly humbling opportunity to meet the moment and build a celebration that we felt was fit for our first 25 years. And I hope the impact that we've had on Bhangra, and hopefully a chance to chart a new course for the next 25. We also, I think the other part of your question is how did it come about? We also did an insane amount of R&D. So we talked to captains, dancers, organizers, judges, artists, on the record and off the record, interestingly. And everybody kind of shared frustrations, disillusionments, pain points about, unfortunately or fortunately, the competitive circuit holistically, but also their memories of the best parts of what a competition weekend is, or the best parts of a Bruin from a long ago. And really almost everybody traded notes really generously with us. They rolled up their sleeves. People connected us with their contacts and resources, shared secret sauce. And I think everyone had this earnest hope for rejuvenation, not just for Bruin, but I think the scene or circuit overall. So it kind of turned out that our vision was kind of just one layer away, under the surface. It was just waiting to be dusted off and brought back to life.
Wait, if you don't mind, what kind of things did you hear about? What were some of those pain points or disillusionments, or for things that you're addressing, I guess, going into this?
I think we heard a lot from folks that there's this hyper focus on judging and rubrics and outcomes. And perhaps the magic of an era where you danced or I danced competitively was that was one small facet of it. It was something you hoped for, but something you weren't so deeply anchored around. And I think that was, the part that resonated with me the most, was that perhaps the competition weekend has lost some magic, that, 9 p.m. after the show is the single moment that we're most focused on. And I think where we started was to zoom out from that. Certainly we've placed a lot of emphasis on reinventing our rubric, reinventing judges, reinventing judging panels and things of that nature, but also building such a wonderful, hospitable competition weekend that hopefully whether you win or you lose, and if you've been a good competitor and you've taken risks, you will lose more than you will win. Like that's just I think statistically true. But whether you win or you lose, you will still remember this weekend as one of the best weekends of your life. I know my time as a competitor, my Bruin weekends have been phenomenal.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So going into this, I know you've talked a little bit about the specificities of the vision and kind of, I say this, like you want to do it up big for the 25th year. And so what exactly is, like, how exactly you're doing that? What are you planning on doing in order to accomplish that?
So Bruin Bhangra 25 is really our love letter to our teams, whether they're competitive or exhibition, our audience, whether they are first timers or long timers. We actually have had some folks in the audience who have been at every single Bruin Bhangra, and our community, whether you know, you're 3 months old or 90.
Okay.
And in a way, when we started out, we were a really small, scrappy dance competition on a college campus, but somehow, by God's grace, we became this irreplaceable thread in the fabric of Bhangra. So whether you were at BB1 or BB25, you were a part of that tie that binds. And I think that's something that we hope to impart to everybody. Like, if you've been here 1 year, if you've been here 20 years, you've been here 25 years, we are together forever. That's really, like, our focus is on the moments and the memories that we hope to build now and for the next 25.
Okay. So love the ideas, love the thoughts. However, I think one thing that is kind of, I think bewildering is a little strong of a word, but just like things that has caused the people in the circuit to take notice is really just like hearing and rumblings of like change, a lot of changes that are being made. So we'll go through a few of them, but I am a part of the generation that cares a lot about judges and rubrics. So like, I'm sorry, but like, but other than that, like, what are the like other main things that you're bringing?
This time we're bringing back like not one, not two, but we're bringing 4 world-renowned artists. So the 2 greatest to ever perform on our stage are Malkeet Singh and Jolly Siddhu, and they will close out the show again together. 2 of our favorite newcomers actually are Chani Nathan and Darpal Moga, and they were so generous to offer us a performance at the after party. So I'm looking forward to that. We've really brought back the largest cash prize that's available on the circuit today. We verified this, and it'll be over $5,000 for first place. It's actually the largest cash prize that's existed.
Period. I was gonna say, like, it's usually like, I remember back. I don't know if this is still true, but when I competed at Buckeye Mela, we liked going there because we would we got first like 2 or 3 times, and so we're just like, oh shit, okay, we gotta go. It's because it's $2,000, and that would really just like set us up for the rest of the season. But then one year we got second, and it was like $500. I was like, oh dude, like this doesn't even cover like reg fees, like.
So Boston, I think, used to be 5,000 in like what we've called the competitive heyday, and we're doing a little bit more than that. We're also covering all the hotel rooms for second place, which, I mean, in 2025, that's almost the same as first place. So we actually have to verify which one would be higher. Third place is also going to be in the thousands. Let's see, our founders, they're just really great, wonderful, kind people, and they're working on some generous cash incentives for
that's fire. Okay.
all competing teams. They have this really like sweet and thoughtful idea that it's our 25th, and I hope we'll be sending everybody back with full hearts. But this year, of all years, like, nobody should go back with empty pockets. So that's just a nice, kind thing that they're doing out of the generosity of their hearts.
That's awesome.
My favorite is actually some of the most legendary dynasties in Bhangra history, who fortunately got their name right here on Bruin stage, are coming back and putting together an all-star collaborative medley performance. Like Khalsa Junction, Share Foundation, Sourme, the original. DRP, People's Bhangra, Empire, Vibe 1.0, the original. LBC, Gabru Shakeen, the original. And a few others. We're still like finalizing their roster. So that's never been done before.
That's fire. That's so sick.
All of Bhangra, competitive or otherwise. So I don't know if we'll ever do it again, but we're really humbled that as soon as we ask, like, every captain, no hesitation, 100%. Yes, tell us how we can help, and booked itineraries, hotels, and whatnot. So
Great.
that one's one of my favorites. We've also come full circle to a classic Bruin rubric. I know we'll probably get into that a little bit later, as you mentioned. Our new judges are the best dancers in, I think, that the circuit has ever seen. And I know that that's a bold statement, and I don't say it lightly. We've also introduced a farewell brunch for all of our dancers. So to debrief with us about the competition weekend, like, we want to hear from you when that feedback is fresh. An opportunity to have, I think, a more meaningful face-to-face with the judges, a chance to meet the artists, and hopefully leave with camaraderie over competition. I think that that's really important. Some of the greatest rivalries in Bhangra have been built here, but also some of the greatest friendships, I think, in Bhangra have been built. And I think that you need something like that to put your frustrations behind you, for us to digest them, and for everyone to move forward together. And we have a few more surprises up our sleeves. We're going to announce them. And then, of course, like we're going back to our most epic venues, of course, our return to Long Beach.
Okay, wait. So I do want to actually ask about the one Long Beach, for anybody who doesn't know, the younger folks, just like go back and like watch like Bruin performances pre 2013, and like that they're all at Long Beach. So like it might seem weird, but like it's been at Long Beach longer than it has been in Orpheum. But one, could you tell me a little bit more about the more meaningful face to face with judges? I'm actually very intrigued by that. If you have any details about that.
Absolutely. So I think what we've universally heard from judges is 30 minutes after you've given it your all and adrenaline is rushing, things didn't go right with you, or things went great with you, and you know you walked away with first place. You're probably not in the right frame of mind to be having a meaningful conversation with judges. Yeah. And I think to the detriment of judges, many of them don't come back to judge because they're just traumatized by some of these panel conversations. Yeah. And I think also to the detriment of teams, I imagine that anyone who has gone into a room with their mom and yelled at a judge probably regrets it 6 minutes after it's happened. But you can't really take that moment back. Like, you can't cut that from the script of life. So I think you need a chance to go to the after party, to put things in perspective, come back, separate what didn't go right on stage with what didn't go right over the weekend, give us that feedback of what didn't go right over the weekend, and then have a more meaningful, open-ended conversation with judges about the direction they'd like to see competitive Bhangra go in. Like, have them impart some wisdom onto you. These guys have all been competitors. In a world where there were fewer competitions, less opportunities to win, their parents probably didn't even want them doing Bhangra. I think they've seen it all. And I think that there's room for more meaningful dialogue the next morning than there is 30 minutes after you've won or lost on stage. And we've heard this from winning teams too, that like there was something they wanted to ask, but they didn't want to seem ungrateful right as they're holding a first place trophy. So I think that that's something, I hope that that's something the scene changes with, but certainly it's something that we are changing with.
No, for sure.
And also,
go ahead.
I think that an open forum, like, I'm hopeful that folks, when put in a room full of people, rather than a private one-on-one, will be more thoughtful in how they frame their questions and how they frame their feedback. I think it's important to hold folks to a higher level of accountability and dialogue. And I think this applies to things way outside of Bhangra. I think this could be applied to politics, the global scene, everything. It is a lot harder to be a jerk to someone when you're face to face. I think we need more open door meetings that actually move Bhangra forward, not just Bruin forward.
Interesting. Okay, so yeah, because there have been a few competitions that have started doing judges meetings like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday after the competition, and so it allows for a little bit more time. But you're suggesting like a town hall kind of situation where like all the peeps are there and they're like all talking. Interesting.
I mean, town hall may be an overstatement.
I mean, town hall,
small group forum.
Yeah.
No one's running for political office here. Town hall may be overblown, but yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that's interesting. Actually, I really like that because yeah, you're right. Like, I will say it's very easy for some people to be jerks in person, in face to face. But I think it's a little bit harder when like other people are seeing you and you're not like secluded behind a closed door. So interested in how that works out. I
And
hope
that goes for both judges and for competitors. This is not like feedback.
No, true. Yeah. I've
universal across the board. And interestingly, I will not drop names because that is not cool. Everyone had this feedback, whether they've won on the circuit in the last year or lost on the circuit in the last year. Everyone had this feedback. Everyone hated how judges meetings go. Everyone hated many parts of it, but no one wants to go on the record and say it. So I'm happy to we'll go on the record. We'll take the ownership of this. We're doing this.
Yeah.
We hope everyone follows suit. But if not, that's okay. We really want to build a healthier, non-toxic competition weekend.
Absolutely. I mean, like, listen, Bruin has like, me and Arnold and Sid have like spoken many times, and like we kind of always like say like Bruin sets the tone for the upcoming year. If something works at Bruin, you will see identities or like ideas from Bruin, not only as a competition but also as performances. You will see like themes from Bruin sets, not like physical themes, but like ideas and motifs like translate throughout the upcoming year. And so, if it works out well, I'm very excited to hopefully see that promulgate through the rest of the circuit.
That's generous. We're grateful.
Yeah. Okay. So we will get into the rubric and all that later. But so for anybody who doesn't know, most of my, like, I'll be frankly honest, like people my age and older do not listen to this podcast. So just frankly, so for all the people who are younger, who are newer to the circuit, help them understand like why the change in location.
I call it more of a homecoming. So you'll certainly remember that Beach Terrace Theater is Bruin's most storied venue. I think it's both physically and maybe more spiritually a return to our golden age, if you will. So the theater is basically on the beach. It ambitiously seats 3,000, and it's one of the most famous stages in competitive Bhangra. So if you've ever watched like an OG Vibe, UBC, KJ, Share, Surmay, LBC, Empire, Peoples, or DRP performance at Bruin from that era, and please forgive me if I forgot a dynasty from that time, it was likely on this stage. It was an epic stage, and it was loved by our performers and the audience alike.
All right, great. So judges, lots of judges. I know them mainly just because, and I'll be frank, I don't think I've ever met any of them except for maybe Preet Chawla, like in passing. I definitely does not remember me. I was 18 at the time. Sid has kind of like told me a lot about these folks. So can you help anybody younger understand who these are, why they're so important into the history of the circuit, what they've done, think kind of like a little bio, and why you think they're going to judge well.
I will talk about the group holistically.
Sure.
I think over the next few weeks, we're hoping to get them to tell us the things that they're most proud of. I certainly have a laundry list that would probably take up the rest of this podcast. But the panel that we've put together is a group of the most legendary dancers to have graced that stage. And I don't say that lightly. So if you know your Bhangra history, you'll know how momentous it is to even bring this group together. I think you and I have talked about the names, and we've both been so grateful for this group coming together. And each one of them has left an indelible mark, not just on Bruin, but on Bhangra holistically. And competitive Bhangra, in a way, exists today because some of the sacrifices they made, some battles they fought, some impossible that they brought into the realm of reality. And I'm really grateful for that. And some of these things are like, for example, one of our judges, they were the first all-girls Bhangra team on the circuit, and they competed at a time where certainly their parents probably didn't want them doing this as their extracurricular, and judges used to have no problem telling them, like, you did great, but I can't give you marks above this because girls should not do Bhangra. I think we've kind of forgotten those contributions, and I'm really excited for the opportunity to showcase them again. If there's a girls team today, if you're a girl that dances on a co-ed team today, heck, if you're a girl who puts on a pug and gets to dance as a boy today, that is because somebody spent an entire year and was willing to hear that feedback over and over and over again, still took it with a smile, and still laid a foundation for everyone else to go do it.
Like a year or two before I started judging, for like peeps who don't know, like it was a genuine topic of conversation with BTF whether the girls could do tuppies or not. Like that was like a thing that like people just kept talking about. I remember talking to HK at one point, and she was telling me how when she started, and so HK is one of the I'm sorry HK if I like messed up exactly what it is, but like one of the like founders of Sponge slash Van City, etc., just like in that scene. But she was telling me how like there was like a genuine like attempt to make like a separate like a lot of people were like, well, girls should dance in like the girls league, and then like she was like very much adamant on like trying to make sure that they were like combined, because like this is a dance form, this ain't like weightlifting or something, and like that's completely like bullshit that like that happens, like that was happening. And so like it's not that long ago that like these conversations were like happening, and so to see that person judging is pretty sick.
Yeah, and the other 7 are same caliber. We're really grateful for the group that we've put together. And I think what we're really, really grateful for is that these folks could have listed a long list of demands to have their name on this roster, but nobody asked for a comped flight, no one asked for a hotel room, nobody asked for a fee. When we called, each and every one of them gave with open hearts to help push competitive Bhangra forward.
Okay, so I will say that I do not judge, or sorry, I will say that I am not questioning the caliber, the qualifications, the abilities of any of these judges. However, I guess my concern is like the circuit has changed a lot. Like the circuit has genuinely changed a lot. This like we're now doing like shut up bichal and like Pakistani Jom, like there's like new steps that like have been, like become more like apparent in the circuit. Plagiarism of the UK circuit is like a constant issue in the American scene, and also just the fact that there's a lot of ideas that like can easily like if you haven't like intently watched Bhangra over the past like 3-4 years, my concern is that like are you gonna catch those like moments of like very obvious like idea theft and or just like knowledge of the circuit as a whole right now. And so for anybody who has that concern, how do you assuage those concerns about these judges?
Well, absolutely. And first off, I want to say, I think plagiarism or inspiration, depending on which end of the spectrum you look at it from, I think that's existed since the beginning of competitive.
No, for sure. And
I think one gimmick that's possibly been recycled over the lifetime of competitive Bhangra, Babe Bhangra Pondene. I think I remember it as maybe Punjabi Surme doing it and getting some uncles to come out. Forgive me if it was maybe Share Foundation instead. But I've seen a version of that resurrected many times over the years. I think maybe 2013, certainly 2016, 2022. So it depends on whether you look at it as plagiarism or you look at it as inspiration. Certainly the competitors who are faced against it probably look at it as the latter. But you're right, that is a challenge.
I will say, like, I think I'm more so like, I guess when it comes to play, like, again, like I'm just saying this just because, again, like this is just like a topic that's been popping up a lot when it comes to UK, because like, so the UK is like very formation heavy, more so than choreo heavy, and so they have very unique ideas that are like very like, I know exactly where you got that chevron to this like transition, or like a very like clear concept. And so I think it's more so those ideas. Obviously they're like yeah, but it's also like you're playing on the lyrics of the song, like whatever. I know I'm not trying to pick on like one example. Like I understand the point you're trying to make, but I think that again, like it's just like the very blatant, like how should I say this? The example is, again, I'm not trying to like make fun of people right now or like point things out right now, but like the examples that have happened over the past 3 years were like very blatant, very obvious, and very annoying, because like sometimes the judge didn't catch it. And I was like, well, the reason you like that set so much was because of that concept, but that concept like happened at first place like 2 years ago in the UK. And so I guess like that's that. But again, yeah, go ahead.
And I think, and to the second part of your point,
yeah,
I wouldn't say that this group is removed.
Okay.
I think that this group probably helped build competitive Bhangra. So in a way, when you sacrifice that much of your soul to see an entire industry exist, you stay very close to it. You perhaps aren't on Punjab Online, which is also not Punjab Online anymore, or on BTF, or on this
BTF is also not
podcast,
a
or
thing
anywhere.
anymore. Yeah.
But there's a lot of WhatsApp threads that deeply discuss the scene today. There's a lot of family parties, one-off conversations. There's a certain generation of us that are deeply involved in, or deeply observant and deeply thoughtful about the scene today. You may not hear from us, but I think we all hear from each other. So I'd be surprised. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at how informed and relevant this group certainly is. And I think some of that is also on us to be an informed group of leaders. So I don't anticipate that any of our esteemed competitors will rip an entire UK set, as you had mentioned, but there will be a large group of us at Tech Time, and I don't foresee something that specific or nuanced being a problem. But again, if you want to bring down a flying Jolie, I don't think anyone on Empire is going to say like, "Hey, you ripped me off."
If you're able, if you
us standing and applauding.
If you're able to pull that off, like amazing. Okay. All right. Great. Thank you for all that. Rubric. Very although a return to form for you personally, so my first Bruin was in 2016, and this rubric is very different from what I've seen, and the rubric that was the year last year, the year before, was probably a little bit closer to what I've seen, and kind of what the wording and the organization of the rubric. Although the point weighting is very different, because point weighting for Bruin is very different, but the wording, the so on and so forth, is similar to what I've seen, or what I'm familiar with. And so I guess first, let's just start here. Why the change to the rubric in the first place? Let's start there.
So I'm going to preface this by saying, you and I have talked about this offline. As we just talked about, I think there's a close handshake between the rubric and the judges of a competition to really define the ethos of Bruin. And fortunately for us, all our judges are past Bruin winners and deeply understand what Bruin is. Now, zooming out from individual point distributions, which this is perhaps not the right form for, we have reverted to a classic Bruin rubric. It was in effect from about 99 to 2015, I can say confidently. 2016 to 2016, I think there were some changes. I think we may disagree on how big those changes were.
Yeah, sure.
But a fun fact is that most Bhangra rubrics over the last 25 years are actually based on this one. So for us, it was more like a spiritual alignment back to what we have been in what I like to call our golden age. But we also felt that it was important to go back to the rubric that started them all. And I don't think we will ever solve every single pain point of every competitor, every dancer, every judge, every organizer, every Umar, every Poonam. I don't think we ever will.
Yeah.
But we do feel that this is the right direction. I think maybe I'll just say that we have a lot of conviction in this one.
Yeah. Rather than going into point by point, as much as I love the intricacies of rubrics, but broad strokes, this rubric is different from past Bruin rubrics that many of the teams that will be competing at this comp will be familiar with. I think that's a given. That being said, having spoken to a lot of teams that are potentially applying or considering and so on and so forth, I think the biggest concern is around this rubric. And I understand we don't have to go into nitty gritty. However, this rubric isn't as blatantly creative or impact heavy or so on and so forth. That being said, you're right. If this is the rubric that you're saying that was when Empire was hanging a dolly from the ceiling, obviously something went right with this rubric. So how would you calm those concerns that let me rephrase. With the change in the rubric, are you trying to incentivize a different type of performance, or will a classic good Bruin performance still do well on this rubric? I think that's the big thing. It's like nobody wants to come to this comp and then lose because they didn't do enough Mirza, or like they didn't like have enough like variations of like Jodia, like some folk Jodia that nobody's ever seen. You know what I mean? Like I think like that's like the big thing. Like, if I bring a Bruin performance, will that Bruin performance be rewarded appropriately?
I think the question that you're trying to ask me is like, is Bruin going folk live?
Basically.
Which, I'm not sure what part of the rubric lands that way for folk. So if you want to like have,
it is very much the 50 points on traditionality. That's like I haven't seen that shit since like 2010. So like that comes to shock.
Interestingly, that many points for traditionality have this rubric more or less, some points here or there. 1999 to 2015. That's what we've had in place. Okay. Now that being said, I think Bruin will always be Bruin. I hope we will always be Bruin.
Yeah.
It was a place to. It's funny that you mentioned that it was a place to launch your routine for the next year. When we first started out, it was actually the last competition of the academic year.
Let me rephrase. I didn't
turbocharged their routine and brought it here. Now,
I wouldn't say that it was like the launch pad, but I meant more so.
Oh no, that's okay. I think Bruin will always be Bruin. I hope Bruin will always be Bruin. Our ethos is that I think Bhangra can be excellent and also entertaining. Is I think the message I'm trying to deliver. Yeah. That. For most of our storied history, the extra that folks bring has really been rewarded as extra credit. And I think perhaps the pendulum swung too far, that it became the minimum, and it became cumbersome and burdensome to folks. And we never intended that. A new team starting their career out, we don't want anyone to be of the burden to, build extravagant sets and spend a fortune to come to Bruin. We will always be a place that rewards creativity, that rewards excellence, that rewards the magic, if you will. But I think we're just perhaps calibrating to take back to what we know to be an effective rubric that empowers entertainment without having, swung the pendulum too far on what the minimum base requirement is to come to Bruin.
Okay, so getting off of that, what are you looking forward to? I mean, there's a lot of new changes, a lot of things a lot of performances, and a lot of special guests and such. But what are you most looking forward to when it comes to this year?
This sounds very cliche, and I don't intend it to be, but really everything from start to finish. I'm not a big party goer. I don't really like parties, and I'm looking forward to all three that weekend. If I really, really had to choose one, I think feeling, it would be watching a new generation of kids fall in love with Bruin and Bhangra. There's a really special joy in seeing that magic sparked in fresh eyes. And if I had to choose one event, we are starting the weekend with an exclusive invite-only event for our earliest winners. A big, OG Bhangra legend reunion, if you will. We need a better name. But I'm really, really looking forward to that. Some of these folks have not seen each other since they left competitive Bhangra, and we're humbled for the opportunity to bring them back together.
That's awesome. That's exciting. Kind of going back on that theme of just, like old heads. Well, do you remember your first, when was your first Bruin?
I do remember my first Bruin. And if you're from my generation of Bhangra dancers, I think we all remember our first Bruin. I want to know your memory of yours, but I may be aging myself here, but I am really grateful for the opportunity to have been like an 11-year-old, I think, in the audience at the very first Bruin. It was long before my dancing career had started. Back then, Bruin used to actually be held in Ackerman Ballroom. It was in our student union. There were like 1,000 folding chairs that were laid out. It was a world before online ticketing. It was the only Bhangra competition in SoCal. So if you hadn't gotten your tickets in India Suites or that, you were just, and if you were at the very back of that line, like our family was that weekend, you were very likely getting turned away. At a certain point, most people did. There was no live stream or like post-performance YouTube video to catch it on. So if you missed it, you missed it. For us, luckily, a family friend was on the team, so he got us in, and we kind of sat on these like freshly laid out folding chairs, the very, very back row. We were wearing our moms and mussies like hand-me-down Punjabi suits, and we were just so excited to be there. And I think I fell in love with the magic of Bruin. And I don't know, somewhere I was like, I hope I get to do this someday. What was yours?
Yeah. So okay. So first time watching, like, I was a freshman, 2014, and it was actually the first Bhangra performance I ever watched. Was a BK 2014 first place performance, and that was like, oh shit, like this stuff is wild. My first time competing and actually being there.
Was that the projector year, or was it after the projector year? Anyway, I'm sorry for the year.
Was that the projector year? That was the year they came out with the lights on their head, and they were like,
oh, yep. Okay.
Yeah. They did a bunch of projector games that year, like a year and the year before. But I would say my first time, like, actually, so I'm from I went to University of Pittsburgh in dance first class, and so like the only time I was ever going to be there in person is if I was competing. But so 2016, it was the year DRP won. We went 20. Yeah, that was the first time that anybody went 20, and so that was like a big thing for us. We went 18. No, we went 20. And that was my first time. I remember being so fucking nervous. I did 8 run-throughs before the comps started. My bug tire had to retie my bug, and he was so mad at me. Just thank you so much. But yeah, like I did like 8 full, like, all-out run-throughs before the competition just to make sure like I knew the set, and like I just kept doing it over and over again. And yeah. Do I remember my time on stage? No, I don't. I watched the video and I was like, oh, I was there. But no, it was an absolutely great, amazing time. The pre-party, post-party, all that stuff. Like, it's a very memorable experience. And if anybody ever has the opportunity to dance at Bruin, you got to do it at least once. It is like definitely like a moment to remember and something that like I treasure forever, for sure. Given all that we said, why? And like, listen, I have been one of the teams that had a piss poor experience at some of the recent Bruins, and I know a bunch of people who are like kind of fed up. Why should a team trust Bruin this year? Why should a team apply this year?
And certainly, I think we as a group take ownership of that. So I on behalf of all of us, we're sorry to hear that. I hope that this year, and I hope the next 25 will be one of the most vividly memorable experiences of your life and career as a dancer. So certainly the years when I've come back as a competitor, whether I've won or lost, are some of the best memories of my dancing career. And I think that's something that we want to impart onto perhaps a new generation of dancers. And really that's the reason for the close partnership between the current team and the alumni board, to hopefully chart a new course, if you will, for the next 25. And I think the more folks that we've had the opportunity to chat with over the years, I think the more we are humbled to find the pervasiveness of that sentiment. Like, you have a Bruin story, I have a Bruin story. The great humbling feeling is that everyone, in a world prior to the pandemic has one. And really every dancer on the scene should have a great story. And I think that's really just what we are trying to build back. And of course the prizes are epic. So if you don't want to believe the first part, there's something.
Fund your next season by winning Bruin. That's right. What do you hope teams will remember then? Like, last question, So last question, what do you hope teams, whether they're watching, whether they're there in the audience, whether they're watching videos a little time later, or teams that are actually competing, what do you hope that they will remember this specific Bruin for?
I think in a moment that's deeply anchored around rubrics and judges, folk or modern debates, or like analyzing and dissecting minutes and points of competitions, I hope that we'll be able to take you back to why you started doing this. And if you've taken enough risks in your competitive dancing career, you will have more losses than wins. Perhaps you should. Perhaps we all should. It's true of even the most storied dynasties, and I think it's the strongest mark of growth. As a retired competitive dancer, I have long forgotten the placings. Like, any trophies that I had an infinitesimally small part in winning are sitting in the homes and the studios of like my esteemed captains. But seared into my mind are the incredible moments, like the rivalries turned friendships and the people that we came to be along the way. I hope that you'll remember the magic and the hospitality, because just as much as Bruin wouldn't be Bruin without all of you, I hope somewhere in each of you, you will also be who you are because Bruin was a small part of your life.
All right. Well, with that, thank you so much, Poonam, for coming on and telling us all about this and a little trip down memory lanes and such. If anybody wants to apply, I think this will go out before late registration. How does somebody apply? How does somebody find the competition?
Go to bruinbhangra.com. Registration is easy. Fill out a form, send us a video, Venmo a registration fee. Ping us. We can walk you through it.
Cool.
If that's a little more complex than it should be.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you for the time, Omar. Have a great day.